Mason Grady had built his hotel empire from the cracked pavement of a forgotten Ohio highway. It started with one worn-out roadside inn and a dream fueled by sweat, sacrifice, and sleepless nights. Over 2 decades, that single property became a chain of 15 across 5 states, a beacon of budget-friendly comfort that families trusted and travelers praised. But growth often brings distance, and somewhere along the climb, Mason had become a man behind spreadsheets and boardroom doors, disconnected from the very heartbeat of his business. Lately, the rhythm felt off. Complaint emails trickled in, then poured. Lukewarm breakfasts, indifferent staff. A particular review lodged in his chest like a splinter. When I asked about gluten-free options, the buffet staff laughed, said they didn't know and didn't care. That wasn't the company he'd built. That wasn't him. So Mason decided to do something radical. No more filtered reports or polished presentations from district managers. He needed to see, hear, and feel the truth for himself. He picked the busiest location, an Indianapolis hotel known for its sprawling breakfast buffet and steady stream of guests. A place he'd never set foot in, with a team he'd never met. The perfect ground zero. He transformed. The silver strands in his beard disappeared under dark dye. A prosthetic nose bridge and thick glasses altered his features. He shaved his head close and carried a duffel bag filled with second-hand work clothes. Mason Grady, CEO, became Rick, the new trainee in Buffett Prep. Dennis, the hotel manager, barely gave him a glance when he arrived. "You the new guy?" he grunted, flipping through a clipboard. "Yeah, Rick. First day." "Great. Buffet Prep. Follow Gina." Gina was a middle-aged cook with tired eyes and flour on her apron. "Lucky you," she mumbled as she led him into the hot, cramped kitchen. Breakfast rush just ended. Lunch is worse. For the next 2 hours, Mason worked in the steam and chaos, refilling scrambled eggs, slicing cantaloupe, watching everything. The team moved quickly, most with quiet efficiency and blank faces. No one seemed cruel, just exhausted. But he was searching for the cracks, the rot that had begun to infect his vision. That's when he saw her. Tessa. 16, maybe 17. A sliver of brightness among weary workers. She smiled at guests, wiped tables without being asked, and gently answered questions as if every interaction mattered. Even when the older servers dismissed her, she kept her chin high. When she passed him near the buffet, she offered a shy smile. "Hey, Rick, can you help me carry the juice pitchers? My wrist's still sore from yesterday." He nodded without hesitation. "Sure thing." As they walked, she whispered, "Just don't let Dennis catch you talking too much." "He yells, Dennis." The man barked commands like a sergeant, never once offering a thank you. Mason watched him, how he spoke down, to staff, especially the younger ones. It wasn't leadership. It was fear-based control. Then came the moment that would change everything. A guest, a father with kind eyes, approached Tessa near the muffins. "Do these have any nuts?" he asked. "My son has a peanut allergy." Tessa hesitated. "I think they're just blueberry, but Dennis cut in from across the room, sharp and loud. "They're fine. No nuts." Tessa looked uncertain. "I'm not sure. I said they're fine," Dennis snapped. Then, lowering his voice, but making sure she, and Mason, heard, he added, "We don't start drama over food. If someone asks, you say it's fine. Got it?" Mason's stomach turned. Tessa forced a brittle smile and told the guest, "They're fine, sir." The father nodded and walked away. Mason leaned in. "Are they actually nut-free?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I asked last week. No one would tell me. Dennis said, if we don't know, just say yes." It hit him like a gut punch. This wasn't a minor policy slip. It was a loaded gun on the breakfast table. One wrong answer could put a child in the ER. Or worse. He kept working, hands on autopilot, mind spiraling. How had it come to this? A culture where truth bent under pressure and fear choked out responsibility. And here was this teenage girl, trying to do the right thing, standing alone against it all. After the shift, drenched in sweat and disillusionment, Mason sat in the break room. Dennis strolled in, sipping coffee like it was just another day. "You'll get used to it," he said. "Just keep your head down." Mason didn't reply, but something had shifted inside him. This wasn't just about a buffet. It was about the soul of his company, and whether it still existed. Dennis scoffed when Mason spoke up. "Don't ask questions like that, girl. Always stirring things up." His voice dripped with disdain. Mason kept his face neutral. "She seems like a hard worker," he offered gently. Dennis snorted. "She's a pain. Cries if you raise your voice. If it were up to me, I'd cut her hours." Mason didn't answer. He simply bowed his head and rearranged a tray of silverware, hiding the fire brewing behind his eyes. That night, back in his hotel room, Mason lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the air conditioning couldn't drown out the noise in his head. This wasn't just a poorly managed location. It was a full-blown cultural rot, disguised under efficiency metrics and bottom lines. People like Dennis weren't just lazy. They were dangerous. But to expose it, Mason needed more than frustration. He needed proof. Tuesday began before dawn. Assigned to the dish pit, Mason stepped into a world of steam and clatter. Industrial sinks hissed, the floor slick with soap and spilled rinse water. It was a two-person job, but when he asked who else was assigned, the prep cook just shrugged. "Just you. Dish team quit last week," Dennis said. "We'll rotate new hires through." By 6 a.m. the breakfast crowd surged. Trays clattered in, caked in crusted egg, syrup, and crumbs. The sprayer nozzle leaked and drenched his sleeves. Every 5 minutes, the trash bin overflowed again. Mason pushed through the chaos, his arms screaming, his resolve hardening. At 7:30, the prep cook reappeared. "Dennis wants you out front to refill muffins." Mason wiped his hands, his shirt soaked, and stepped into the buffet area. Tessa was already there, quietly stocking bowls of oatmeal. Her shoulders slumped slightly under invisible weight. "You okay?" he asked gently. She glanced around before answering. "Didn't sleep. I kept thinking about that man yesterday. What if his kid had eaten the muffin?" Mason's voice dropped. "You tried to warn him. You did the right thing." "I should have pushed harder," she murmured. Before Mason could respond, Dennis's voice tore across the dining room. "If you two are done chatting, maybe try working." Tessa flinched. Mason clenched his jaw but said nothing, retreating back to the kitchen. As he passed the doorway, he caught sight of a different server. Mid-20s, tattoo sleeve, scrolling through her phone by the coffee station. Dennis walked past her without a word. "Is that normal?" Mason asked the prep cook. She gave a tired sigh. "That's Cassie. She does what she wants. Dennis won't say anything." They worked together at some steakhouse years ago. Cassie dumped cold coffee into the sink and wandered off without refilling the station. 2 guests waited nearby with empty cups, unnoticed. Mason turned his attention back to the kitchen. Mid-morning, an elderly guest appeared at the counter, holding a sausage on her plate. "Excuse me," she said politely. "Is this supposed to be pink in the middle?" Mason inspected it. It wasn't pink, it was raw. "I wouldn't eat that," he said gently. "Let me get someone." He stepped into the hallway and flagged down Dennis. "There's a guest with undercooked sausage. It's not safe." Dennis didn't even look up. Tell her it's smoked. It's supposed to look like that. It's not, Mason said firmly. It's raw. Dennis's eyes flicked up, hard and cold. You're not a chef. Don't argue. She's an older woman. That's a health risk. Dennis stepped closer, voice low and pointed. You're new. You're replaceable. Don't start pretending you run the kitchen. Mason met his stare and held it. Then, without another word, he walked back to the buffet. He found the guest, apologized, and took the plate. I'll get you a fresh one, and I wouldn't eat these for now. She nodded, concerned. Thanks for being honest. Back in the prep area, Mason dumped the remaining sausages into the trash when no one was looking. By noon, the breakfast crowd had thinned. Dennis gathered the buffet team for a quick meeting. Starting tomorrow, we're cutting station overlap. Refill and clean your own areas. No more hand-holding. A young trainee raised his hand. But I don't know how to restock the hot plates. Dennis waved him off. Figure it out. You want me to hold your hand too? Cassie laughed. Dennis smirked. Mason caught Tessa staring at the floor, lips tight. After the meeting, he caught up to her near the storage room. Do you guys get any kind of allergy training? She shook her head. I asked. Dennis said we aren't paid enough to need it. You ever think about quitting? I can't, she said softly. My mum's sick. I help with bills. Mason nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of her words. You shouldn't have to deal with this. It's better than nothing most days, she whispered, walking away. That afternoon, Mason was assigned to a training session with 2 new hires. The training TV was broken. Dennis tossed them a stack of outdated paper handouts. Skim these and sign the form. He walked out without another word. Cassie, who was supposed to supervise, sat in the back corner eating leftover pastries, chatting loudly on speakerphone. You guys good? She mumbled, not looking up. The new hires exchanged confused glances. One of them turned to Mason. Are we supposed to clock out now? Mason stood. I'll find out. He walked to the front desk. A young man in a wrinkled button-up shirt was checking in guests. The line was 5 people deep. He was the only one there. Is someone else covering the desk? The man didn't look up. Supposed to be. Guess she's late. You okay? You okay? He nodded, but his voice was frayed. Been on since 6 a.m. No break yet. I just want to make it to 3 o'clock. Mason glanced at the schedule pinned to the wall, and something in him cracked open wider. This wasn't just about food safety. It wasn't even about one bad manager. It was about a system that allowed neglect to grow roots, and the lives it quietly crushed beneath it. There was a name on the schedule for the front desk shift, starting at 11 o'clock. Casamasis. Mason already knew who that was. He found her back in the kitchen, still lounging and scrolling through her phone. You're supposed to be on desk, he said evenly. Cassie looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. Who are you to tell me that? I'm just trying to help, Mason replied, keeping his tone calm. She stood up deliberately. You want to help? Wash the floor, and mind your business. She walked out, leaving a trail of pastry crumbs behind. Mason watched her go. The prep cook passed by and muttered without stopping. She's untouchable. Dennis always covers for her. That evening, Mason stayed behind to help a housekeeper named Gloria. She was in her 60s, moving slowly, breathing heavier with each step as they carried towels to the 3rd floor. They got rid of our cart lift last month, she said, nudging a closet open with her hip. Said it wasn't worth repairing. Dennis told us to use the stairs. Mason glanced at the cart. It had to be over 80 pounds, stacked with towels, sheets, toiletries. How many floors you cover a shift? 4. Sometimes 5. Depends if someone calls out. Do people call out a lot? Gloria chuckled, but there was no humor. Wouldn't you? That night, Mason didn't even turn on the TV. He sat at the small desk in his hotel room, fingers steepled under his chin, staring at the wall. He thought of Tessa, a teenager forced to lie because telling the truth meant risking hours. Of the front desk worker who hadn't eaten all day because no one could relieve him. Of Dennis, and how he had created a world where cruelty was normalized and silence was survival. Mason opened his laptop and started a document. Immediate actions. At the top he typed, 1. Remove Dennis and Cassie. Non-negotiable. Below that, he began to list names. Tessa, Gloria, the front desk worker, Evan. People who deserved better. People who had kept this place from collapsing through sheer grit and quiet courage. He wasn't done, but he knew one thing. Tomorrow, he wouldn't be Rick anymore. By Wednesday morning, Mason had made his decision. He arrived in uniform one last time, walking through the service entrance like any other day. But this shift would end with truth and consequences. He had arranged for 2 people to join him that day, the regional HR director, Sam, and the head of brand compliance, Jordan. No announcement, no fanfare, just 2 quiet observers ready to witness the truth. The final straw came not long after the breakfast rush. Mason was wiping down the juice station when he saw Evan, a young staff member in a navy polo, return from delivering a tray to a guest with limited mobility. He was barely 22, sweat beading across his forehead. I need to sit for a second, Evan said to Cassie, who was leaning against a wall, picking at her nails. Cassie didn't even look at him. If you can't handle room service, you're in the wrong job. Evan sat down anyway, breathing shallow, pulling an inhaler from his pocket and taking a hit. Dennis strode by just then. What is this? Nap time. I just needed a minute, Evan said. I don't care. You're not paid to rest. I have asthma, Evan murmured. Dennis crossed his arms. Then maybe you should get a desk job instead of dragging your feet around here. Mason stepped forward, heart pounding. He's not dragging. He just walked a full tray up 3 flights. Dennis turned, irritated. Rick, stay in your lane. You're not in charge. Mason took off his fake glasses. Calm, steady. Number. But you're not in charge anymore either. Dennis blinked. What? Mason stood taller. My name's Mason Grady. I own this company. The room went still. Cassie froze. Evan looked up, stunned. Tessa, who had just stepped in to grab extra bowls, stopped in her tracks. Mason turned toward the hallway. Sam. Jordan. The 2 corporate reps stepped into the room. Sam held a portfolio. Jordan already had a notepad open. Dennis turned pale. Wait, this is a joke, right? Mason didn't blink. Number, you've been mistreating employees, ignoring health and safety protocols, and letting laziness and fear define leadership. That ends now. Cassie crossed her arms defiantly. I've been doing my job. This is crazy. Mason met her eyes. I watched you ignore guests, walk away from duties and belittle your co-workers. You made this a hostile place. You're done here. In that moment, the silence that followed wasn't just shock. It was relief from the staff who had carried this place while being crushed by it. And Mason, once lost in distance and delegation, had never seen more clearly what leadership truly meant. Cassie's voice was sharp with disbelief. What are you talking about? Dennis tried to steady the ship. I was fine. He's not the one making decisions anymore. Sam stepped forward, voice firm. Cassie, we'll need you to collect your things immediately. We'll escort you out. Cassie opened her mouth as if to argue, then slammed her apron down and stormed out. The air was thick with held breath. Mason turned back to Dennis. "Let's not waste time. You've created a toxic environment. You've endangered guests. You've bullied your staff. You're terminated. Effective immediately." Dennis's mouth moved, but nothing came out. Finally, he muttered, "You don't understand how hard it is to keep this place running." Mason's voice cut through. "I do, because I just did it. Without yelling, without lying, and without blaming everyone else." Sam began guiding Dennis toward the office to begin the offboarding process. Mason turned toward the growing number of staff who had gathered silently near the prep line and hallway. No cheers, just wide eyes and a kind of cautious hope. "I owe all of you an apology," Mason said, voice steady. "This should have been dealt with a long time ago." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Gloria appeared in the doorway, still in gloves, her hands marked with years of labor. "Is he really gone?" she asked. Mason nodded. "Yes." She exhaled, then said quietly, "Good." Mason walked to Evan. "You okay?" Evan nodded, still catching his breath. "Yeah, just didn't expect this." "You should have never been spoken to like that," Mason said. "Starting now, you take breaks when you need them. We'll make sure you have coverage. And I want a full health review of every physical task assigned in this hotel." Jordan, from compliance, was already writing it down. Mason approached Tessa, who still stood frozen with a stack of bowls. "You've been the only person consistently advocating for guest safety. That takes courage." She swallowed. "I didn't know what to do. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." "You should never have had to make that decision alone. Starting today, you'll be on our guest service quality board for this location, and you'll work directly with our training lead to implement proper allergen protocols." Her eyes widened. "Me?" "You've earned it, and your pay goes up next shift." She nodded slowly, still stunned. Mason addressed the room. "This isn't just about changing who's in charge. It's about how we work together. No more intimidation, no more guessing on safety, no more protecting people who drag this team down." A new hire raised her hand, her voice soft. "Will we have a manager? Someone who listens?" "Yes," Mason said. "Tomorrow, we're bringing in someone from our flagship hotel. 10 years of leadership and 0 tolerance for disrespect. Until then, I'm staying on site." He looked around. "If you've got concerns, come to me directly." Gloria stepped forward. "Do we still have to use the stairs with those heavy carts? Number that lift should have been fixed weeks ago. We're bringing in a mobile unit immediately and replacing the permanent system." From behind the front desk, the overwhelmed young man leaned around the corner. "Will we get more help at the desk?" "You will. 2 part-time hires start Monday. Until then, admin staff are rotating down during peak hours." Mason's gaze swept the room. "I know many of you have felt invisible. That ends now. You show up, you care, you work hard, you get treated with respect." No one clapped, but the air had shifted. It was lighter, real. That afternoon, Mason sat in the office Dennis had kept locked. The room was in chaos, papers everywhere, a broken printer, unopened mail. He sifted through a dusty stack and found a folder labeled "Staff Requests." Inside were allergy inquiries, shift change please, repair reports. Most were over a month old, untouched. He passed the folder to Sam. "These get handled today. Every single one." That night, Mason didn't retire to a suite. He moved his belongings into a standard second-floor room, the same ones the guests used. He walked the halls with the night crew, noticing burned-out bulbs near the service entrance, and made a note. He stopped by a vending machine near the elevator. It hadn't been restocked in weeks. He inserted $1 and pressed for water. Nothing. He wrote that down, too. When he passed the housekeeping closet, he saw Gloria folding towels alone. He stepped in and began folding beside her. "You don't have to," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." She didn't say anything more. She just handed him a fresh stack, and for the first time all week, her tired face lifted into a quiet smile. Change didn't come from speeches. It came from the small, intentional actions that followed. And Mason was just getting started. By Thursday morning, Mason arrived in the staff lounge at 6:30 a.m., clipboard in hand, sleeves rolled, no disguise. The air felt different. The usual buzz of small talk was muted by anticipation. He greeted every employee by name. Not because he was showing off, but because he had stayed up the night before, memorizing every schedule, every timesheet, and every file. These people mattered, and it was time they knew it. "Gloria," Mason said that morning, clipboard in hand, "take the first half of the 3rd floor today. I'm bringing in temporary help for the rest. Your knees aren't optional. They're part of this team." She gave a quiet nod, the same calm expression she wore the night before. But now it held something more grounded. Trust. "Evan, you're with me," Mason continued. "I want to see how you handle the new room service routing software. You'll be the first team lead we train on it." Evan blinked. "You want me to lead? You know the building better than anyone here," Mason said. "And you've kept guests happy with zero formal support. That's what leadership looks like." He turned to the group. "We have a long road ahead, but it starts with structure. Today we build it." He wasn't bluffing. By 10 a.m., a regional technician was already assessing the broken lift. 2 temporary workers, hand-picked from a trusted staffing agency, were being trained by Gloria herself. She didn't wait for a title. She took command naturally, walking them through each step, how to brace carts on landings, pace the stairwells, and stash supplies without blocking emergency paths. At the front desk, Mason stood beside Marcus, the quiet clerk who had handled the chaos of the past week with calm precision. "Can I ask you something?" Mason said, as Marcus answered back-to-back calls. "Sure. Why don't we have wireless headsets here?" Dennis said they were too expensive, not necessary. "Would it help avoid tripping over cords every 5 minutes?" "Absolutely." Ordered. "It arrives tomorrow." In the kitchen, Mason found Jeremy, the soft-spoken lined cook who had been single-handedly preparing all the buffet proteins. "You're the one who's been cooking the sausage, right?" Jeremy nodded. "Yeah." "Walk me through your process." Jeremy did. Everything seemed standard, until Mason pointed to the oven thermometer. "It's off," Jeremy admitted. "By at least 20 degrees. I've been eyeballing it." "How long's it been like that?" Jeremy shrugged. "Since I got here. No one's fixed it." Mason immediately called Jordan. "Replace it before lunch, and I want every food prep thermometer across all locations checked and recalibrated by the end of the week." In the dining room, Tessa had taken initiative. Using laminated allergen cards Mason had printed the night before, she began training new hires. She didn't ask permission. She saw a need and filled it with clarity, confidence, and care. "If someone asks if something's gluten-free and you're not sure," one new server asked, Tessa didn't flinch. "Tell them you'll check, then come to me or the kitchen. Never guess. Never say it's fine unless you know for sure." Mason, standing nearby, waited until she finished. "You just delivered more guest safety training in 10 minutes than this location has in a year," he said. Tessa looked down, a bit embarrassed. I just wanted to make sure nobody gets hurt. And that's why you're being promoted to Guest Services Coordinator. You'll report directly to the new GM Mason, never made announcements of praise in front of crowds. Promotions were given quietly, deliberately, and based on merit, not performance. Later that afternoon, a woman in a navy blazer arrived at the entrance. Natalie, a respected GM from the Pittsburgh location, sharp, disciplined, and fiercely respected. She had worked with Mason for over 10 years. In the staff lounge, Mason introduced her. "Natalie isn't here to babysit," he said. "She's here to rebuild with all of you." Natalie stepped forward. "Starting tomorrow, I'm holding one-on-ones with every department. 15 minutes. Come ready. No sugarcoating. No eye rolls. No sighs. Just acceptance. The kind that only comes when people realize real change is actually happening." That evening, Mason walked the halls again. Not undercover, not investigating. Just observing. The vending machines had been restocked. The lights in the back stairwell replaced. The buffet trays now had allergen icons. And a second set of tongs sat neatly beside the gluten-free section. He passed Jeremy, sitting near the back hallway, sipping water. "Off shift?" Mason asked. "Yeah, just cooling off. You ever think about applying for a sous chef role?" Jeremy looked stunned. "Here? Number in Louisville. Our new property has an opening. I already sent your name." Jeremy blinked, speechless. "I need people who care. You've kept that kitchen going. I see that." Mason left him there in quiet disbelief and moved on. At the front desk, Marcus was calmly explaining restaurant options to a guest, handing over a printed guide. When the line cleared, Mason leaned in. "You know," he said, "you never once complained." Marcus shrugged. "Didn't think it would change anything." "It does now. You're being promoted to assistant front desk manager. You'll help train the new hires." Marcus didn't smile, but his shoulders lifted, just slightly. Mason's final stop was the loading dock. He found Tessa sitting on a milk crate, phone in hand. She looked up. "Everything okay?" "I just wanted to say thank you," Mason said. "For what?" "For not giving up. Even when everything around you said you should." She looked down, then back up. "I didn't think anyone noticed. I did. And now everyone will." "Does this mean I can stop lying to guests?" she asked, half joking, half serious. "No one here will ever be told to lie again. Not on my watch." They sat in quiet understanding for a moment. Then Mason stood. "Tomorrow's Natalie's show. Mine is done. But I'll be back. Unannounced." "You mean undercover again?" She grinned. "Not necessary anymore," Mason said. "Now I know who to trust." He walked out the back entrance. Alone. No cameras, no applause, no ceremony. Just a quiet promise. Kept.